Bene, via di
Your video's on, John.
per tutti lei da questi voli e anche questi fiori azzurri, bene, e anche questo tempo grigio, pieno di musica e di uomini che ti sono piaciuti. It's wonderful, it's wonderful, it's wonderful. Good luck, my baby. It's wonderful, it's wonderful, it's wonderful. I dream of you, chips, chips. You do, you do, you do, you do, you do, you do.
And there we go. Little intro music from Paolo Conte. And I'm here again with Gabriel for one of our engaging conversations. Hello.
Thank you. Hello, hello. Thank you very much for having me.
It's a
Really,
privilege and a pleasure. So I think it's the third or fourth time that we're meeting in this format, and we are recording, and we'll release it however it turns out, however we find appropriate, okay?
perfect.
So we agreed that we were going to talk about the Jungian theory of the shadow and the Gnostic view of evil, which are a good match, I think. So,
Mhm.
how would you like to start?
Well, I wrote down a few questions that I think might work as a good introduction or a good beginning to the conversation.
Mhm.
Um, I sent a little message prior to this conversation just with a suggestion that maybe if we can really dig into the Gnostic interpretation of the shadow, its origin, how it relates to Sophia and the Aeonic designers. Um, it's part of our mental faculties. It's a very important aspect. But Jung didn't really have, as far as I'm aware, the the full Gnostic conception, especially, that you have created. And Gen Z, the generation that we're trying to talk to, they can find videos about the Jungian shadow everywhere on YouTube, but I don't think they can find a Gnostic interpretation or a Gnostic blossoming. I don't know if that's the right word, but kind of a larger scope of the shadow, what it means to us as individuals in a Gnostic presentation, and also to the entire narrative that's happening, the Kalpa, the revival. Um, so one of the one of the questions that maybe starting off at the deep end, perhaps, but I think that's fine. Um, is that
Deep.
yeah,
Yeah.
we get deep straight away. It's better this way, I think. Skip the frivolities. But something you said, which has always stuck with me, is that the fate of the Kalpa rotates or moves
Turns
on turns on
life
one,
at a time,
yes, on one soul at a time, or one life at a time.
one life at a time. So let's
And it made me think about the dichotomy between saving yourself and saving the world.
sure. This is
And
I like the way you're setting this up. Just could I make a prefatory comment? We're
please,
obviously going to talk about Jungian theory, but in my view, it's also uh, important to talk about the man in addition to his theory, the man, his life, how
sure,
he lived, you know. And you make
sure.
the observation correctly that Jung did not have a Gnostic conception. Now, as far as I know, because Jung died when in 63, and he I'm pretty familiar with the Bullinger collection of his complete works, which I have,
Mm.
that he did not delve into Gnostic material except peripherally. He certainly, we know he didn't have the Nag Hammadi translations to work with, as far as I know, although he bought one of those books. It's called the Jung Codex. He bought it illegally from a trafficker. It's a great story. He was in Belgium at the time. He went to Belgium and he met this trafficker, this underground agent who trafficked in things like this, archaeological discoveries. And he was out on the coast of Belgium, where I've been often, at a place called Coxseed. And he was on the tram, and they agreed to meet on the tram like secret agents. And Jung bought the first book of the Nag Hammadi from this man. That's why it's called the Jung Codex. Okay.
Huh.
But I would just make this observation before we plunge in. Although Jung did not have a Gnostic conception in many respects in the development of his work and the framework of his theories, he did have a Gnostic obsession.
Mm.
In fact, you see pictures of Jung with his famous Gnostic ring. He wore a Gnostic ring. You can see it on his hand. And he actually formed a private cult along with Hermann Hesse and Miguel Serrano. And they colluded imaginatively in the notion, in a scenario, in the narrative, excuse me, they colluded in the narrative that they were all reborn Gnostics. Jung himself claimed to have been Basilides, who was a Gnostic in Alexandria. And he wrote the 7 sermons to the dead, Jung did, which he presented. Jung was very cagey about certain things. He played certain cards very close to his chest because he had the desire to protect his private life from his public life. Obviously, he had an enormous public life, but he also had a very strong private life. So he claimed that the 7 sermons to the dead was like a channeling from Basilides, who was a Gnostic. So you can't eliminate the Gnostic element from Jung, but at the same time, I think it's fair to say that he didn't look at a lot of things through the Gnostic lens the way we can today.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, that's a good way of explaining it. I can imagine him and this trafficker in there, like high drawn peacoats, meeting with glasses on and a pulled down hat.
It's a great story. It's really like a spy story of how he acquired the Jung Codex.
Yeah.
Right? It's not much. The first book, volume 1 of the Nag Hammadi, is not much in it, but it's not as rich and full as the other volumes. But we know that he had that in his physical possession. So where do we start with this notion of the shadow?
Right. Well,
that it's very popular and that many of Gen Z know about it and talk about it. It's going around. It's viral in a sense. Okay. But what are they talking about? What's the conception? What's the definition that we begin with here?
sure. Well, the shadow is that part of that archetype that exists in the collective unconscious. And it is the part that you can't see. And everything the persona rejects goes into the shadow. And it's those aspects that you don't like or you find insufficient. It's where you're vulnerable, but also it's a very moral endeavor to integrate the shadow. This is kind of the way people understand it. If you don't, if you don't integrate it,
Let me interrupt you for a moment. Reading off the great oracle of our time, Grok AI. Okay. First time I've ever used it and probably the only time I ever will, right? C.G. Jung's theory of the shadow describes the unconscious part of our personality containing repressed, disliked, or unacceptable traits, desires, and instincts, both negative, like selfishness and rage, and positive, like creativity and assertiveness. It's our, quote, dark side we hide from ourselves and others, but integrating it through self awareness, dream analysis, and confronting projections brings psychological wholeness and individuation. That is to say, becoming a complete self, a whole person. You think that's a good working definition?
Yes, I think it covers
Pretty much
the
what
basic.
people think, right? That's pretty much
Exactly.
okay. Can I come right out with guns blazing?
Please, yes.
Uh, the unconscious part of our personality containing repressed dislikes and unacceptable traits. Okay. Well, what if I don't have repressed dislikes and unacceptable traits? What if there's nothing about myself that I dislike? Where's my shadow?
It's a good point.
Yeah. So there's an assumption. It's what you call pathologization, to pathologize.
Mm. Mm.
So just to give you a little personal background, uh, I encountered Jung very young, and then I started to investigate psychology. And I would say that I've probably investigated every single branch and brand of psychology that exists, over the years. And of course, I didn't like Freud. And the main criticism of Freud, which everyone needs to know because it's very valuable, is that what Freud did was he wanted to explain why the Goyim don't like the Jews. And so he pathologized the Goyim.
Mm.
He said, well, they don't like us because they're sick and they want to fuck their parents and they have penis envy and all these other sick, demented theories of Freud are merely the ways that he pathologized the outgroup. His in-group pathologized the outgroup. So I didn't
As
like
a
it.
way of
I
explaining the Goyim's
read
disdain.
the interpretation of dreams first, and I thought it was absolute shite. And
Mm.
then I went to Jung and I thought, wow, what a breath of fresh air, man. This is so much better. And I think many people have had that experience, They think, wow, Freud, no, Jung, yeah, yeah, we're on your team Jung.
Mm.
And I was, into Jung for a long, long time. But gradually I came to realize that Jung also pathologizes in his own way.
Mm.
And I would consider that the concept of the shadow and projection is a pathologization that Jung commits. And so I look at it from that point of view. And obviously I have a critical point of view because, well, if I don't dislike anything about myself and there's nothing that I'm repressing, then does that mean that I have no shadow, that I can disregard that concept entirely? You see where I'm going?
Yes, for sure. It made me think originally, when you're a child, when you're a young child, you don't have a shadow because you don't have parts of yourself. Like when you're 3 years old or 4 years old, you don't have parts of yourself that you don't like. Um,
Good
it
point.
seems, yeah. And then, like, obviously, as we grow, we have these comparisons with other people. We have comparisons with society at large, and we develop things we don't like about ourselves that have been foisted on ourselves to a large degree through
Yeah,
this eternal comparison.
that raises a very good point. It's like it raises the question, well, are these disliked, repressed, and unacceptable traits inherent when, as you say, they don't appear to be present in the child? Or are they acquired traits? Do we get them when we start to interact socially and somehow we contract them like you would
Mm,
contract a disease from
mm.
interacting with other people? But I have another counterpoint to that. I think
Mm.
it's going to be a great conversation because obviously I have counterpoints to
Yeah, it's good.
uh, I remember vividly when I was from some of my first memories growing up in Friendship, Maine, that I, looked into myself in the way that a child does, or I felt things and I acknowledged what I felt. And I felt hatred, contempt, and anger from a very early age toward what was around me, toward
Mm.
my family situation, and toward the people that were around me, you know?
Mm.
And so I felt those things really innately, and I was very puzzled by that. I remember one of the things that puzzled me greatly in the very early years, I'm talking about maybe 7 to 10, I thought, why am I just so hostile? I didn't act hostilely, by the way. I didn't act it out. I wasn't
Mm.
a hostile, aggressive kid, you know. I was pretty sweet and amiable and friendly. But I had enough self-awareness as a child, and by the way, I think children have profound self-awareness.
Mm. Mhm.
May not be able to articulate it in language, but at an intuitive feeling level, they
Yeah.
have. And in my self-awareness at that time, I looked at myself as kind of shocked. I thought, wow, why do I like detest these people around me, you know? And I never actually judged myself. I never said, oh, there must be something wrong with me because I'm some kind of hateful, contemptuous kid. But I did have those feelings. And so I suppose you could say in a Jungian sense that would have been the germ of the shadow in me.
All right. Okay. So if the shadow is maybe something learnt,
Yeah.
then because it's also described as your animal nature.
Oh, wow. Your animal nature.
Yes.
So,
And then lower. Like it's given animal and lower. But also like if people are able to comprehend it better, they will say that there are elements of that shadow that are your best self. That if you can hone, will come out as your most creative, your most decisive. So for example, a good example is if you've seen Fight Club.
mhm,
Yeah. So Tyler Durden is the main character, the protagonist, Shadow,
mhm,
essentially. And he is, the most creative, the most assertive, the most beautiful. He fucks the best. He like does everything that Jack, the main character, wishes he could be.
mhm,
Uh, but also he's a force of nature.
mhm.
Um, so is there a relationship between the shadow and, you know, Sophia, for example?
So, is there a relation, excuse me, between the shadow and our so-called animal nature? So, when you go to this concept of animal nature, uh, it brings up a big red flag for me
Hmm.
because does that concept, people say, well, we're humans, we're not animals.
Hmm.
Well, I say we're human animals. What are you going to
Yeah.
make of that, right? So when you just introduce into your mind the concept of animal nature, are you bringing a negative connotation to it?
Well, beyond that, I'd say it creates schizophrenia.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, like this is the dichotomy that Steiner has between your angelic nature and your animal nature. At first, I thought, wow, yeah, that's amazing. Like because the animal nature is all the bad things about me, and I need to be more angelic. And then I started to think about it a bit more, and I was like, but it makes me schizophrenic thinking about it.
Yeah, there's an inherent factor of cognitive dissonance, and you find that in Freud's doctrine, deeply embedded in Freudian doctrine, the trinity of
Mm,
the id, the ego, and the superego.
mm,
And the id in Freudian psychology is that dark, deep animal, violent, predatory, uh, and so the whole question, it puts in question the value and the correct application of this concept of our animal nature,
Mm.
see? And if you
Hmm.
put a negative stamp on that, then it takes you down a certain road immediately. It
Hmm.
goes to cognitive dissonance, it goes to schizophrenia.
Mm.
So these are like, we're handling like explosives here.
Mm.
These psychological concepts are like Semtex, they're like explosives. Handle them very carefully, they're going to blow up in your face.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the more like we're sort of just doing a little research before our call because it's been a few years since I've actually looked at the definition of the shadow. So I was like, all right, just brush up on the definition. But it also started to make me think about using these psychological frameworks can often, and I have been almost unconsciously using them for a long time, is dangerous. Like it can make you feel more schizophrenic. It is like juggling dynamite, because if if you're trying to create composite parts without having a narrative that forms a whole around it, then it only ends up in a split, and and that becomes your baseline that's your baseline assumption about yourself and about your brain,
Yeah.
about your mind. Oh, it
Not
is just
only a
split.
baseline assumption about yourself, but we're talking here of baseline assumptions about humanity.
Mm,
What is human nature? If we're not animals, then how are we non-animals? Are you a
mm,
non-animal? I don't think so. I think you're
mm,
an animal. You just happen
mm,
to be a human animal. So what specifically characterizes a human animal? You see?
mm,
And the way that I see that Jung has constructed this doctrine is based on a dichotomy, which can become schizophrenic. And the dichotomy is, well, here is the human being, the human fava being. I said,
mm,
here is a human being who is a social animal, but over here inside that is an animal.
mm,
And that animal might have uh, instincts, drives, desires that are unacceptable socially.
mm.
And so you're working with this dichotomy. To me, that's confusing.
Yeah.
I prefer to say we're human animals. We're animals of the anthropine species, and we share certain traits with other animals, and others we don't. And so the challenge there is to say, well, what is specifically unique about being a human animal?
Mm.
And as you know, that's one of my big obsessions, is to talk about the novelty
Yeah.
of being an animal, and that's where it goes to Gnosticism and the Sophianic myth,
Yes.
because that's the only framework that I know, the only narrative framework where you can develop clear and simple concepts of the novelty of the human animal. You can
Mm.
still be an animal. I love being an animal. I
Yeah.
really enjoy it. But you can also take responsibility for the human part of being an animal.
Yeah. Well, this makes me think, do animals not have a shadow? That's irrelevant. Animals, instead of the shadow as an idea, no, animals just don't have a socialized, like human concept, a human socialized environment. And if we're trying to always fit into a human socialized environment, you're always playing a sort of non-plus game because the social environment changes and it's dictated by, well, today by psychopaths. And so, what might be acceptable now is not going to be acceptable in a year's time. Take Australia, for example. Australia they're introducing a political law that will outlaw any um, dissident groups.
Mm-hmm.
This happened because of the Bondi, shooting, and so. there are various groups in Australia that have now disbanded, um, and they may well be judged for their past actions before the law was introduced now. So
Right.
people are going to be arrested for things that they did prior to the law even started. So, this idea of the human social order it's a fiction that can just be dictated by whoever is wielding the mallet. Um,
I agree. The social order, by the way, being convicted of laws that didn't exist when you committed the crimes is what they did at the Nuremberg Tribunal, by the way.
mm,
The Nuremberg trial of the Nazis was
mm,
based, first of all, it was based on the assumption of their guilt. Okay. But second of all, they convinced them of war crimes that actually weren't on the books at the time that they allegedly committed these war crimes. This is a
mhm,
tactic of the rulers, the authorities, you see.
mm, mm,
So I think this is very helpful what you're saying because now I can make a distinction and I can say there's a distinction between uh, to the act to falsely pathologize someone, which I consider Jung's theory of projection to be, and
mm,
the actual fact that the social order, as I call it, is a pathological disaster.
mm,
Okay. But those are not the same thing. I can
mhm,
say, my involvement with the social order, I have to be disciplined because a lot of aspects of the social order are toxic and pathological. But that doesn't mean that I innately am
mm,
pathological. You see?
mm.
Because for me, the test, we can talk about these theories, but the test goes back to look at yourself, look in the mirror. Do you dislike yourself? Do you have violent, repressed, depraved animal desires? I don't.
No,
And am I the only person in the world who doesn't have them? I don't think so.
no, no. I think that is actually, depending on the demographic, the majority. I think some demographics are different.
You have those.
Um,
Yeah, right.
yeah, and that can be, that's evident when you look at different places in the world.
Right.
But, if we're talking about the Western demographic,
Hmm.
no, I don't. I think generally that isn't the case. This is why I don't think the assertion that a Christian moral code is what makes the Western man or woman moral. It isn't.
Absolutely
Like
not.
these things are innate, and they're innate because well, they're innate for probably a lot of reasons, but one of the more, let's say, scientific reasons you could give is that due to the ecological environment in which we evolved, we've had to work together in order to simply survive. And like the imperative of working together has been so fundamental to our development that it's innate in us to work together and not want to be pathological towards each other.
Right.
Uh,
Mutual
because
aid,
in,
the factor of what has been called mutual aid, which is also
yeah,
evident in animal societies, by the way.
yeah,
Animals also exhibit extraordinary forms of mutual aid as well as competition, right?
hmm
Yeah, that
hmm
theory is very popular. Uh, I would propose a second theory along with that, and that concerns, why do we have a high trust society? Well, you
mm.
just gave an explanation, which is,
It's cold.
yeah,
You won't
well, we
survive the
need to
winter.
rely on each other.
Yeah.
That's one way to look at it. And then you could say then that the morality of Western civilization comes out of that environment. It comes out of that setting. And we have established these morals based on necessity, based on the need to rely on each other and trust each other. But you could also say, and this is my viewpoint, well, if I met you in person, you know, why would I trust you? Well,
Mm.
the answer is simple. I trust myself.
hmm
I trust myself in the first place. I trust myself to be moral. I don't need rules. I have a moral compass. I know
Hmm.
what is right and wrong. I don't have to be told that, rape is against the law.
Hmm.
Okay? So I have innately a morality, a moral compass. I trust myself. And so then when I look at you, I say, okay, provisionally, I'm going to assume that you also trust yourself,
Hmm.
you have the same moral compass, and then we'll see over time if that proves to be true. But I think it's very characteristic of Western people, and this is can be a disadvantage, is to extend that factor of trust where you really shouldn't. You really
Yes. Yeah. It's been a disadvantage in my own personal life
has it. Yeah.
because I am what the Swedes would say blue-eyed, which means naive. Like, because I trust myself, because I like don't, I am just a generous person, someone who thinks trust is just like assumed and the basics and, shysting and conniving people, fucking people over is not something I could do because I couldn't live with myself if I did it. And I assumed that that was the case for people I've met, and I have been royally fucked over before. And I think, it's also the problem with liberal pathological altruism that
Uh,
we have in the West is the same thing, like now
I'm
you've,
putting a gun to your head. Liberal
yeah.
pathological altruism is a big factor in the downfall of our Western moral code.
Hmm.
There's another factor that I would add as we're building this picture. See, what I see we're doing here is we are building a picture that is going to go to the Gnostic view of human nature and the Gnostic view of evil. We're like
Hmm.
laying the foundation for it. The other factor, which is often not discussed, is pleasure. So,
Hmm.
if I say, well, excuse me for saying so, folks, but it seems to me, I've tried to know myself, I've looked into myself all my life. It seems to me that I am innately good, innately noble, innately trusting of other people to have these same characteristics, you know, and that and I enjoy being that way. It's a pleasure. Whereas conniving, shysting, stabbing people in the back, deceiving them, and harming them is not something that I would find pleasurable. I wouldn't
Yeah.
enjoy doing that. I don't not do it because some rules of morality tell me not to do it.
Hmm.
I don't do it because I wouldn't enjoy doing it. But
Yeah.
there are people who enjoy doing that. That is a
Yeah.
fucking fact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it leads also to, well, if we just go back to this liberal pathological altruism, it also is underneath this idea that C.S. Lewis he put out very, very succinctly when he said, I think the beginning of the quote is like, of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. And so, like, we have the tyranny of the school mom, and that's like baked into this idea of this pathological altruism, like the goodwill, this natural goodwill of the blue-eyed European or American has become so pathological that it's now a way of oppressing each other, and
Absolutely.
it's a tyranny that is worse than robber barons.
It is. It's a terrible tyranny and it's a terrible tragedy that Western society has gone down that path. And that is where a very rigorous correction
Mm,
needs to be made. There needs to be a rigorous correction in the moral view of Western people in order to deal with the victim situation that they are in, presumably due to their own liberal attitudes.
mhm, mhm. I mean, the liberal it's just a sign of brainwashing, essentially. Like, okay, it's a propensity and a very good one if given the right context, but it's being used as a weapon by an external force or a
Exactly.
conglomeration of external forces.
Yeah, and that's no accident. You know the famous story about the horseman uh, around. This was around 1776, I think. The horseman who had a satchel, and in his satchel, leather satchel on the saddle, he had the papers of the Illuminati, founded by Weishaupt in
Hmm.
1776, and he was delivering them from one lodge of the Illuminati to another, and he was struck by lightning
Mm-hmm.
on his horse.
Hmm.
And the people came to the scene, they found this satchel, and that's how they found originally this private papers of the Illuminati, which then became
Hmm.
the protocols of the Elders of Zion, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you believe that these are forgeries, because even a forgery can contain a true statement,
Hmm.
right? And one of the statements is, we will introduce liberalism as a toxin.
Hmm.
And it actually is that. It's a poison. It's like lead poisoning in the body, social body of the Western world, liberalism.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. Um, Extraordinary that that lightning strike happened.
Yeah.
That it was because, they can pass it off as a forgery, but all you have to do is look at how the events have played out and compare them to the statements that are made in the learned elders protocols,
Yeah. I
and you
think
can be like,
Henry Ford, who used to give a copy of
yeah,
the protocols when he sold the car, was confronted with that. And he said, well, whether they're a forgery or not, it's irrelevant.
yeah,
They described exactly the program that is being implemented by the authorities, by the globalist, we call now the globalist parasite psychotics.
yeah,
He said, this is exactly what they're doing. It doesn't matter whether you call the documents a forgery or not, it's irrelevant, he's saying.
yeah, yeah.
So, can we relate this back to uh, the theory of the shadow somehow? Because I wanted to ask you this question. Uh, is it fair to say, in the common understanding of the shadow and projection, according to Jung's paradigm, is it fair to say that if I look at another individual and I see something I dislike in them or hate in them, it's just a projection of something in myself?
Not all the time. I mean, potentially there is an example of that. Um, you have the Revenge of the Nerds, which is kind of an interesting thing that has occurred in American culture since the 70s or 80s, where, who rules the world now? Well, nerds rule the world. Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, people who probably at high school had a big resentment against the well-developed, well-turned-out jock who was probably not as big a bully as they were made out to be by the Hollywood representations and that kind of stuff. And I know that to be the case, like in school, like I'm just going to beef myself up here. I was a jock. I had friends who were jocks. They weren't bad people. In fact, actually, they were very nice.
Yeah.
And this is more like the Nietzschean resentment of the last man, projected outwards. So maybe in this case, you can have this idea of a shadow projection, and you hate this person, and because it's actually a reflection of your insufficiencies.
Yeah.
But
Right. That fits. I can see that. So,
but in a general
inferiority
sense,
complex, in a sense. You
right? It's more like an
the
inferiority
inferior,
complex.
they look at themselves in teens, for instance, and they see, well, they're inferior in physical ability, in attractiveness, in their looks, in their amiability, in their skills, whether they be mental or physical or sports. And that
Charisma
develops
as
a
well.
resentment in them, which impels them through their life to want to dominate that situation rather than to look at their own selves and change themselves. They project it outward, and it becomes a psychotic uh, form of behavior.
Yes. And I would say that is quite prevalent with who the technocrats who run
Technocrats,
Sil-
absolutely. Yeah.
Silicon Valley now today.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is their resentment of nature, expressed in their resentment of the naturally charismatic person. Um,
The resentment
but
of sexuality, resentment
yes,
of sexual pleasure, charm. You know, one of the things that was big through a good part of my life was flirting. And you can't flirt anymore. Who says you can't flirt anymore? Well, it's the authorities who
mhm,
probably never had a satisfying sexual flirtation in their entire life, so they
yeah,
don't want you to have it either, right?
yes,
I do miss flirting. Flirting was wonderful because there was, in my experience, there was always a clear distinction. It was like it was flirting with objective and flirting without objective. So I was always very clear about that. And the girl on the other side of the flirtation was too. That, oh, we're flirting like crazy, but we're not going to go anywhere with it.
yeah,
We knew that. We had that agreement. And then on other occasions, we're flirting like crazy, and yeah, we're going to go somewhere with it.
mm,
And it was it was just, I don't know. I feel so fortunate that somehow we knew that, our sexual and social instincts were good enough that
yeah.
we knew what we were doing.
And I think going back to pleasure, you get pleasure from tapping into that telepathy
Hmm.
to know that this is a flirtation without an end goal, and it's
That's right.
totally fine.
Yeah.
Or vice versa, and understanding that it's one with intention, and there's some kind of telepathic beam that goes between you, and that itself is a very pleasurable like space to occupy.
Tremendous. That's also where the trust factor comes into play. You know,
Yeah.
that I could flirt outrageously with a woman, but she trusted me that I was
Mm,
not going to push it into anything she didn't want.
mm,
And I
mm,
trusted her that she was not going to pull me into anything I didn't want.
mm,
So how in the fuck did we know this?
mm.
I'm an old timer, man. Like, I'm 80 years old. I may as well be talking about things that happened in the Middle Ages. I want to get across to younger generations today. We knew this. We knew this innately. We handled it really well. What happened?
Yeah, there's a very good question. What happened? I don't know the answer to that. It's some sort of it's some sort of telepathic or distortion in the perception of reality. Maybe it's the brainwashing and the inculcation into certain mental pathologies because of the media. Could be a large case. Like if you look at the average TV show that was running from, I don't know, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, even now, they're extremely dramatic in the way like there has to be some problem happening all the time.
Hmm.
And maybe even that, this kind of seeds itself in people's unconscious, and then they unconsciously search for problems and therefore unconsciously create them when it shouldn't be.
Well, I don't want to, this would be a digression to go into this, but there is clear evidence in the historical record that there is an intentional program to drive us into insane pathological behavior. It's called the Sabbatean agenda. And that's no
Hmm.
mystery. You can go,
Yeah.
research that. So I don't think that this has happened. And, I can tell you, if anyone wants to know, what was it like in the 50s? What was it like in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s?
Hmm.
I can tell you all that. And
Hmm.
I can tell you on the basis of my big retrospect at this point in time in my age that it didn't just happen naturally. It didn't, the degeneration is driven.
Yeah.
There is a prompt.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's educational. It's in the media.
Yeah.
It's in the news. It's in the film. It's in
Yeah.
literature. You
An
know,
objective was inserted into the zeitgeist, into the paradigm. I don't,
exactly. It's
yeah. I mean,
not
one,
intentional. It's very intentional that we've been
yeah.
put into this. Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be a stretch, probably, that most people would say, but I think it's a relevant point to make that if you look at Freud, um, and after Freud, you had the father of propaganda, Edward Bernays, okay, who was related to Freud.
And possibly his child, by the way.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, in kind of a weird way. I don't
Yeah.
exactly remember, but it's some sort of incestuousness. I
Yeah, with
don't
Minna
quite.
Bernays, who was the sister of his wife, who lived
That's
in the
it. Okay.
household with him. Minna Bernays.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So he was his uncle and father at the same time,
There
like
you
something
go.
quite strange. Yeah. So then the owner and founder of Netflix is Mark Randolph, who is Edward Bernays' grand nephew, something
Is
like
that
this.
so?
Yeah. So you're seeing a line of continuation here, between Freudian psychopathology and then the founder of the largest like streaming TV media company in the world. They're related. So
Big surprise.
um,
Big
yeah,
surprise.
yeah,
And again, if you want to track it back, well, who initiated the Sabbatean agenda, which is a program to drive the nations into complete degeneration and self-destruction and loss of moral bearings? You know,
yeah,
it
mm,
comes from a certain in-group. There's no mistaking about the in-group. That is
yeah,
the Sabbatean agenda. And so it's in a bloodline, but it's not necessarily a reptilian bloodline. They don't have to be reptilians. I mean,
no,
I'd rather have an iguana sitting over here on my filing cabinet than one of those people in my presence.
yeah, yes. Um, okay, so maybe we can move on to the Gnostic conception of evil because we've spoken about the Sabbateans. We've spoken about this kind of malignant mental virus that's in our presence and being pushed upon us by those in position to show us things on the TV screen. Um, so yeah, where does evil originate?
Mm-hmm. Well, can I frame that since I'm a resident Gnostic scholar here?
Yes, please. Yeah.
A quick, uh, you know, fast summary of that. Uh, so I've been thinking about this, how to do this as concisely and clearly as I can. Okay. So when I first got on to what the Gnostic theory of evil really was, before I wrote Not in His Image, developing it, the concept, this meme came up. And the meme was evil occurs in human behavior when error escalates beyond the scale of correction.
Mm,
So, according to the Gnostic view of the human animal, we have certain innate faculties, 7 to be particular. And
mm,
without going into the technicalities of that, everyone knows what they are. You have your intellect, you can read and write, you have your probity, very important skill. You question a situation and you try to figure out what happened. You look for evidence. We have different creative and moral capacities. Okay.
mhm,
And according to the Gnostics, nous, which is our intelligence, innately contains a self correcting function.
mm,
So you are not an intelligent person by Gnostic standards unless you know how to correct yourself, unless you can
mhm,
detect and correct your mistakes. And they may be mental mistakes or they may be behavioral mistakes.
mhm,
I was in that situation. I behaved in that way. Oh, I see that was a mistake. and I correct it. So what happens is that if that self-correcting faculty fails, then people make errors over and over again. The errors compound each other, and they get to the point where the errors go beyond the scale of correction. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when people commit evil. That's when they
Mm-hmm.
commit harm. And so the Gnostic view of evil is very sophisticated. And I struggle sometimes because I think, well, maybe it's too fucking sophisticated for people to understand. Because in fact, the Nag Hammadi materials do not literally say that the archons are evil. They never say that. By the way, the word evil, the word evil in the Coptic documents is taken from Greek and it's kaka.
Kaka,
Kaka.
like shit.
Yeah, like shit. Kaka is the word for evil in the Nag Hammadi documents. Not very
Right.
sophisticated. You know, you would think they would have 3 or 4 words for evil, and they probably did, you know, but they have
Mm.
more words for error. They have
Okay.
sorim in Coptic, they have apake, and they were very sophisticated in describing how we make errors.
Mm.
They said, well, a great gift of the human animal is that it can detect and correct its errors.
Mm.
So they said that the archons are messengers of error. They represent an extra human, non terrestrial, parasitical penetration into the human mind. And they
Mm-hmm.
fuck with this ability to correct ourselves.
Okay.
And if they can fuck with it enough, we lose that ability. And at that point, it's like your moral compass is shattered.
Okay.
And so the evil is not cosmic. There is no cosmic evil in Gnosticism.
Mm.
It is not a Zoroastrian system of duality.
Mm.
It is not a Jewish system where good and evil come from the same source.
Mm-hmm.
The divine Father God is benevolent and good, but the divine Father God tests you with evil, tests you with tribulation. This is
Mm.
completely alien to the Gnostic viewpoint.
Right.
So it's very sophisticated what they say, and you know, it may be too sophisticated for some people to get, but I have to say it because I know it's true. That
Yeah, I don't think
evil is the
it's I don't,
social in the social order. There is no evil in the cosmic order. I
right. Okay. Evil. So just to clarify, evil uh, is the result of compounding error without correction,
in the
and
social order.
this is a social order production. It is not a cosmic order production,
Absolutely not.
but the archons and the demiurge will penetrate the mind or influence the mind to prevent it from identifying and acting to correct its errors. And so, how does it do this? Is it through emotions?
It does it primarily through irrationality and absurdity.
Hmm.
There's a very famous line in the second treatise of the great Seth, which is one of the great revelation treatises in Nag Hammadi, that totally obliterates Christianity, totally obliterates the Savior concept, totally
Hmm.
obliterates Mosaic religion and
Hmm.
Judaism. And there's a line where the revealer, the foster, is the Gnostic revealer. Okay. It's not a superhuman being, it's just an illuminated, smart person. Okay.
Hmm.
Who says the plan that they contrived against us is absurd and senseless. So the actual weapon is absurdity and irrationality.
Hmm.
See? And you can see that everywhere. I mean, the way people behave today is shocking. It is so irrational and
Hmm.
insane. And these social justice warriors and these activists who are coming out and creating such uh, harm and division in society, if you stand them there in front of you and you question them like a sane, rational person, if they would allow you to do that, which they don't,
Hmm.
they would not stand up for 5 minutes
Yeah.
because what they believe they're doing is completely absurd and irrational. It's as simple as that. You don't have to look for, and of course, the other tool that the archons use is how simulation.
Okay. Well, we'll get to how in a second because that's obviously really important. But could an example be with the social justice warrior, for example? So they're essentially acting out the destruction of their own homes, their own societies, and this is based on complete irrationality and nonsensical thinking. They, for example, are not able to perceive the long-term effect of something. And so it's in that irrationality that they'll say, yes, it's fine to bring in like hordes and hordes of foreign people because right now they need help. And right now that'll make me feel good. But they won't have any like sustained viewpoint to be able to understand how that'll result in 5 years, 10 years, and what it will do to the housing market, what it will do to the job market, what it'll do to the general sense of people's well-being because they need familiarity of culture and sensibility in order to feel good about life. Like, this is an example of irrational thinking.
Yeah, and when you look at that and you peel back another layer of it, you can approach it with this kind of question. Well, it's obvious that they uh, derive a certain kind of satisfaction, pleasure, or even a delight. You know, they're wired, they're hyped
Mm,
up.
mm,
They derive a pleasure in this destruction with a disregard for the long-term consequences. So you can ask the
mm.
question, well, how could anyone find pleasure in that? And the answer is they can't find it where they need to find it.
Right, right. Huh.
That's where the emotional factor comes in. That's where
Hmm.
feminism comes in. You
Hmm.
know, feminism is a result of, again, the Sabbatean agenda and so forth. But basically, the women who are hardcore feminists uh, have never had the pleasure and the privilege of the pleasure of their own bodies and the pleasure
Sure, yeah.
of genuine, affectionate, respectful, sane sexual encounter. They've never had that pleasure. And so you have to be missing that pleasure to become insane enough to find pleasure in destroying your own society and your identity. And
Yeah.
that's how I see it. It's not that complicated when you
No.
pull the layers apart.
So feminism is a result of a lack of orgasms.
Absolutely. And I recommend to everyone, you know, when I did metahistory.org, the landing page quoted Wilhelm Reich, you know,
Mm, mm,
knowledge of what is alive is the sole thing that can banish terror. It's not an exact quote, but that's what he said. Knowledge alive alone can banish terror. Just take that on
mm,
board. Knowledge of what is alive alone
mm.
can banish terror. And that's from the function of the orgasm. And if you haven't
Right.
read the function of the orgasm, well, excuse me, but you are not an educated person. And the point that he makes in the function of the orgasm is very simple. He said the goal of our human experience, and this is very Gnostic, by the way, is to two things: love and work.
Hmm.
So you love your work, you love your life work if you can.
Mm.
And love and work should be coming from the same root. They grow out of the same root. Well, what is that root? Well, Reich said very explicitly, it is what he called the self-governing character structure, what you
Mm.
and I would call the autonomous being, the sovereign
Right.
individual. And he said explicitly, and I swear by this, and you know, prove me wrong if I'm wrong. He said that the basis of the self-governing character structure is sexual integrity.
Sexual integrity.
Yeah. meaning that
Uh-huh.
you are holding your sexual desire in the right place in your body and you are enacting it and transacting it correctly. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean that you don't even, it doesn't necessarily even mean that you are sexually active all the time, but it
Mm.
means that you hold that sexual force in the integrity of your moral self
Mhm.
and you
Mhm.
handle it responsibly. And he said, uh, if you can't do that, you cannot become a self governing, sovereign human being. And that is the fucking bottom line. If you'll excuse my English,
Mhm.
that is the bottom line as far as I'm concerned. No one, you know, as Carly Simon famously said, you know, no one does it better. And no one said it better than that. And
Okay. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. And it makes perfect sense.
yeah, so
So,
please
yeah,
proceed.
sure, sure. The there's also this Gnostic concept of envy
Right.
in relation to, well, this is envy, not like jealousy. This is something I remember you saying from one of the first
Absolutely.
things that I ever heard you say. It's not jealousy. It's way worse than that. It's way more destructive. It's envy. Like, if I can't have this, then
Nobody can.
nobody can. Exactly.
Right.
And I'm going to destroy it so nobody can have it.
Exactly. You know, envy, pathonos in Greek, the Gnostics explicitly uh, said that insofar as you consider that the archons have motive, they don't really have motive like we as a sovereign animal do. They more like have
Mm,
the motive of a horde of locusts, you know,
mm,
or maggots, or, you know, parasites. But
mm.
insofar as you can consider they have motive, their motive is envy. Now it gets back to Reich again. It's not my idea. Reich wrote a book called Sexual Revolution. And in this
Right.
book, he explicitly says, hey, listen, you're married, you have a lovely wife, you know, you two have a good life together. And uh, you can be jealous if your wife is attracted to someone else. Okay? Maybe it's obvious. And why shouldn't it be? I mean, people are like that. You know, you
Mm,
just have to set boundaries on your desires, you know?
mm,
And he said, well, it's natural for a man or woman to be jealous. And that can even be inspiring in a way. You know, if I'm jealous of my friend who has a custom 57 Chevy,
mm,
uh, I might do something to get one myself.
mm,
But if I go out and I destroy it, I steal and I destroy his 57 Chevy, or I harm him, that's
mm,
envy. Envy
mm,
means that you destroy what someone else has, not merely that you would like to have it as well.
mm,
That's a really important distinction.
mm.
Envy is lethal.
And that envy, does it derive itself from the envy of Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, the envy of the archons, of Sophia, and of us
I
as
believe so.
organic?
I believe so. You know, there's a whole unit, a whole set of things that I've talked about. I think it's on my YouTube channel. It's also on Nemata
Mm,
that I call the five skull crown initiation, five skull crown instruction. This is some elaborate tantric thing that I cooked up.
mm,
And uh, one of the statements in that five skull crown instruction is that envy is not innate to the human animal.
mm,
And so I do believe that envy arises in the human animal due to the decay of the sovereign moral element in us.
mm,
We have a sovereign moral element. People call it the moral compass. And if it's damaged enough, then a person whose moral compass is damaged is going to feel inadequate and broken, even though they don't admit it. And out of that feeling, they will become envious. But envy is not innate to the human animal. I do
Mm,
not have envy.
mm,
I have contempt, hatred,
mm,
anger, but I do not have envy. And I would advise anyone who's listening to look into yourself and just ask that simple question. It's like a test, a litmus test. Have I ever in my life seen something that I wanted that someone else had and I wanted to take it away from them?
mm,
Never.
mm, mhm. It's a really extreme.
Yeah.
Like I can't say that I've ever done that either, and it's because
No.
it's very extreme. It's not just, you can have errors of being disgruntled because you find yourself to be jealous of something, and then you look inside and you're like, look, I can get this. I'm deserving of this if I put in the work and like I put myself in the right situations and I'm honest with myself. But to have that crippling, like intense envy, like, no, I'm going to destroy this and you because I don't have this. That seems to me a very unique pathological uh evil
Yes, it is.
that is a lot more rare. But it also seems to be one of the main characteristics of, you know, yeah, some of the handlers, some of the ruling class,
Yeah,
some of the,
definitely the authorities and the ruling class are
yeah,
permeated with envy. One of the most glaring examples of that you see is in the so-called communist revolution and
yeah,
in the Bolshevik Revolution. Oh, our cause is dictatorship of the proletariat. We are champions of the working class, and the end justifies the means. So we
yeah,
will do anything to bring the power of capital and production into the hands of the working class. That's a
hmm
complete lie. In fact,
hmm
the object of Bolshevism is to destroy the working class.
hmm
And I would say that we're living in a time of an extraordinary challenge in that they are doing everything they can to destroy the working class. And not just the
hmm
working class, but to destroy work,
yeah,
dignity of work, the pride
yeah,
of work, the mutual collaboration that it takes to do anything. They are trying to destroy this. And unless there is a counter force uh, to stop them, it's hard to tell how far it'll go. It's already gone way beyond the limits as far as I'm concerned.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I completely
And
agree.
for Gen Z, that I understand that's a problem because if I was, in my 20s up to 30, it's not like when I was in my 20s and 30, way back then in the Middle Ages, okay? It was tough, man. I had to do some tough shit. There were times when I couldn't pay the rent. There were times when I had to do jobs that were very difficult, but I could find a livelihood.
Yeah.
Whereas I can't imagine being 25 years old today and asking yourself, what am I going to have for a livelihood in this world?
Yeah. It's a serious issue. There's a lot of us staring down the barrel of the gun of entire workforces being made redundant within the next couple of years. The there is a double-edged sword to it, which is interesting. Like those who are original, those who uphold the inherent, like the primordial divine capacity of the originator of the Aeonic mother, that what we were talking about before with being an originator, that is the fundamental divine characteristic that you can embody. Those who are able to do that will not lose their jobs or will not be folded into the singularity and general AI, AIG or whatever it's called. But those who have just gotten by on kind of pretend jobs that those will cease to exist in a few years. I mean, even a job like a solicitor won't exist in a
Mhm.
couple of years. What is a solicitor? You just read contracts, and okay, it's a valuable job. It's very valuable to society, but it's you just there's a base well of knowledge that you have to know and an ability to read contracts and read draw these contracts up, make changes in them, etc., etc. Claude, the AI Claude, is already doing it
Right, but
and doing it without
60 to
any
70%
mistakes.
of the output of LLMs and AI is hallucination and lies.
Yeah.
60 to 70%. So
Uh,
if what you say could happen, I realize we're looking at that, it's a threat on the horizon. But if AI collapses, it won't happen.
Well, yes, yeah.
It won't happen.
Uh, no, but the problem is how long will AI exist with before it collapses, and to
I
what
can say
degree will
exactly when AI will collapse.
go on?
It's collapsing now, by the way. I don't know if you followed that, those
I
people who are talking about this.
I don't know exactly. I mean, I know the AI bubble is primed to be popped
Yes.
because it's artificial, but I don't know if that what that would actually mean for these AI companies.
Yeah, it means that not only the companies, which are financial frauds,
Yeah.
collapse and the investment collapse because investment is usury and usury is evil.
Hmm.
So corporations are evil. They're not cosmic evil, they're evil productions of human greed and envy.
Yeah.
But AI itself, AGI, LLMs, everything right now is collapsing. It's failing. And so I'll give you a date, all right? And that date is right here, 2026. I'm looking at the ephemeris, okay? This is not prediction, by the way. Let's just say I'm like the weatherman. I'm not predicting the weather, but I'm saying, considering the trend in the weather, it's likely
Okay.
we're going to have a tremendous thunderstorm on Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is that? What is that book?
I don't predict. This is a book of the motions of the of the planets in the solar
Oh,
system. Okay.
okay. So astronomy, astrology
This
kind
is
of
an
book.
astronomical document. And hold on, it's right here. You have to go to Saturn and Neptune, probably in a period, I would say, from certainly from March, the middle of March. March 12th, by the way, is a tremendously important date in the cosmic drama. But without predicting, what I'm saying is that the collapse of AI, the collapse of these machines, the production of GPUs and CPUs is completely insane. They're not selling. Do you know that these companies are not selling what they produce?
Hmm.
They're
I
making
know.
revenues.
I know they're not making any money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are they doing?
Yeah. It's a very good question.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that there's a collapse happening now. It's like we're in a building that's collapsing, but
Hmm.
we don't notice it at first.
Hmm.
Maybe, oh, there's a crack in the wall or
Hmm.
but the total, absolute, undeniable free fall is coming. And
Wow.
by March, no one will be able to ignore the fact that AI is not going to be the determining force in our future.
Interesting. Well, I wonder how that'll play out. I mean,
It's
because
followed by a return to authenticity. There's going to be a lot of collateral damage.
yeah.
But getting back to what you were just saying not too long ago, this is a wonderful opportunity
Hmm.
because what you were just saying is that what is the work that's worth doing? People will
Yeah.
want to work and they will want to love their work and do work that is worth
Mhm.
doing rather than say, okay, I surrender. It's hopeless because AI is going to do all the work to run our world.
Yeah.
It never can. It never can.
It's interesting because that's the what people are trying to play off as the future scenario. Elon Musk has come out and said stuff like, well, by 2028, if we haven't got robotics up to scratch globally the whole global economy is going to collapse. The only way we can save ourselves is by replacing productivity entirely with robotics and AI. I just read an article that just came out. I didn't read it. I just saw the title um, from some big account on Twitter who's obsessed with the singularity, and he's like, everyone will be billionaires by 2029 because AI will have resolved everything. And it seems so absurd. And it's also what instantly came to mind was this idea that essentially, if it was to be successful, they would give you this choice of like fold yourself into the singularity by signing up and giving away all of your human animal sovereignty, and we'll make sure that you have a subsistence for the rest of your days, or don't, and be cast to the outskirts of society. This was kind of the fear that a lot of people had.
It's all hype. It's all bullshit. It's
Yeah.
all con. It's a threat display that they
Mm.
can deliver on.
Mm.
Show me a robot who can fix the leak in the garden.
Yeah.
Why? Why would you even want a robot who could do that?
No.
You know?
Yeah.
Elon Musk is completely demented. Nothing he says ever makes any sense. Uh, the promises and these projections are part of his archonic dementia.
Hmm.
That's all that they are. And the beautiful opportunity that is looming, the real opportunity for life, your individual life, your livelihood, your creativity, your future, and a society beyond the madness is that when that collapses, as that collapses, we go back to authenticity
Yeah.
or not. If you're not, it will take you down if you do
Yeah.
not have the creative and moral strength to find what to do in your life, to find your purpose and stick to it. It will take you down. But if you do that, a new world of opportunity.
Yeah. I think this beautifully caveats into something I was thinking about just before this call, because my missus and I, we went for a walk, and we were referring to something she'd given me, and it felt like yesterday, but it was actually 6 months ago that she gave it to me. And we were like, what is going on with time perception? Because that felt recent, but it was 6 months ago. And then I was thinking about, okay, well, time perception, there is some sort of distortion. I thought, well, maybe this is just a fact of getting older. I don't know, maybe that just happens. But it also made me think about something you told me, which was the end of A10 and the beginning of A11. For the viewers here, so A10 is Anthropos 10. I'll let you explain it. I'll just give a quick summary. A11 is Anthropos 11, and what you said to me in our last video call, that is on YouTube now, is A11, this story, this life cycle, has been spliced into the end, the last 15 minutes of A10. And so now we've got two realities, two narratives running side by side, and one's going to end. And whatever that means for the end of that, and those who are fully participating in that. But meanwhile, A11 will continue, and A11 will begin and flourish and blossom. And so, what you're talking about being authentic is the choice to be part of A11.
To be a higher mutation.
Yes.
I explained that concept in what I consider one of maybe the top 5 things I've ever done. It's called Director's Cut, and you can find that on Nemata. And what that describes is that there's 5 reels to a movie. That's the kappa of 25,920 years.
Hmm.
So it breaks up into 5 reels of about 5,000 years apiece. And we're in the fifth reel. And we're in the last 11 minutes of the fifth reel.
Mm.
So imagine a projection booth with the old big cylinders.
Yeah.
The fifth reel is playing of a movie that started in 3,102 BC is when the fifth reel started.
Right.
First reel. It's the last episode in this movie, and it's playing out, and the film is running through the projector, running in front of the bulb, and then she comes in. Because she can
Mm.
do this, because she is in the experiment with us.
Hmm.
Jan Sophia can do this. She can intervene in her way in the human psyche and in the way our mind and memory works, and she can perform her magic. So, what
Mm.
is the magic? She comes in with a strip of film that is the first 11 minutes of a new, totally new reel, a
Mm.
totally different movie. And she splices the last 11 minutes of the beginning of the new movie
Hmm.
over the last 11 minutes of the end of the fifth reel.
Hmm.
And so what happens from that point on has been detected in the Mandela effect.
Right.
Mandela effect, what is it? I did a long series on it. It's the beginning of the perception, real perception, that wait a minute, there are two memory lines running. How come I remember it that way and someone else remembers it that way? That was the initial clue that these two, it's you're running two films in front of the projection bulb at the same time.
Hmm. Hmm.
At first, they appear to be very similar, but as it proceeds, they depart more and more.
Right.
And so A10 ends up in the end of the fifth reel in chaos and wherever they end up.
Yeah.
But A11 takes the human adventure into a whole other cycle, into a new world, into the next world. You see,
Mm.
this is a beautiful cosmic
It's
conception.
it's amazingly beautiful. Mandela effect. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the
Yeah,
fairest of them all?
magic mirror on the wall, mirror,
Yeah.
mirror on the wall. And
Yeah.
I analyzed about 70 Mandela effects, field of dreams. If you build it, he will come. If you build it, they will come. And explained how they are cues that she is messaging into our psyche about how she is facilitating the mutation of A11.
Hmm.
But in order to be A11, you have to self-select yourself into it. It doesn't happen passively. In order to belong to that higher mutation, you have to meet certain standards. You have to hold yourself to being someone with a self-governing character structure,
Right.
someone who is rational and at the same time fully emotional, fully able to feel emotion, but not
Yeah.
play emotion against reason. There are
Mm.
there are specific traits, and you'll find these traits in people that you meet, and then you'll know immediately, okay, here we have the mutant, here we have the A11, and everyone else is collateral damage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
It's hard to deny. I mean, some people are tapped in and you just know you can just feel they're tapped in. And then others are like,
yeah, they're gone. They're beyond
yeah.
the scale of correction. Their psyche and their moral compass have been demented beyond the
Mm.
scale of correction.
Mm.
And of course, it raises a question, well, how is one to feel toward those people? Do you want to help them? Do you want to save them? Do you feel a compassion for them? I'm not going to dictate what anyone feels toward them, but I don't feel shit toward them. And I don't care what happens to them. I only care about what happens to the people I love in my immediate world and those who are willing and able to take this great opportunity. It's a renewal and regeneration of our species, unlike has never occurred before,
Mm. Mm.
ever.
Mm. Yeah. Well, if it's the end of the Cowper, it's kind of what you would expect. I think
2216, I calculated as 2216. So in the comparison of 26,000 years to 24 hours, that's about 10 minutes. There's about 10 minutes left in the Kalpa,
yeah.
according.
Yeah, and if you give that a lifetime comparison, what is that? It's two lifetimes, maybe
Yeah.
three at a push.
And
Yeah.
so people say, oh, is it going to be that long? It looks really bad now. Yeah. Does that mean it's going to get worse and worse before it gets better? Yeah, but it's also going to get better and better as it gets worse. That's the
Yeah.
dual
Yeah.
reality we're living in. It's going to get
Yeah.
better and better, but you have to be able to see that and place
Yeah.
yourself in that.
Yeah.
Trust yourself.
Yes. Yeah. I think the only thing I'd say to this idea of should you care about the goners is, well, that's for everyone's decision to make because these
Yeah,
people could be very close to you. But I think one thing to understand is that they will act like someone who's drowning. And if you're trying to help someone who's drowning and you're in the water with them, they'll often climb on top of you and drown you and then drown themselves.
absolutely. One of the things I learned I was in the recovery movement. I was not a recovering alcoholic because I was not an alcoholic. I was not a recovering drug addict. I was what's called a recovering adult child. So it's the adult child syndrome, ACA. And that simply means that you're an adult who still has needs that weren't fulfilled in childhood. So it's not your fault that you have those needs. It's your parents' fault. But it's your responsibility to now meet your own needs that you're an adult. It's
Mm,
so simple. And fundamental to recovery are the ideas of enabling and codependency. So in
mm,
recovery, we learn the tools to recognize what is enabling and what is codependency, and they are deadly syndromes. And they will
mm,
bring you down with the people who are going down.
mm.
But I just like to add this, and maybe because this is coming up strongly in my self-governing character structure, and I maybe would be a probe or a cue to our next talk.
Yeah.
What is the key? What is the one essential factor that you need to know and own to go into the new movie, to go into A11, so that you will know that and then you can confirm it. You will have the evidence in your own experience that it's true. It's not just a theory. It's not New Age make believe. I'm talking,
Mm,
and that is purpose.
mm,
Purpose.
mm,
You have to know what your purpose is.
mm.
Okay? And I've thought a lot about purpose because that's one of the topics that I would enjoy talking with you about
Mm.
in regard to the demographics of Gen Z or anybody.
Mhm.
How do you find your purpose in life? How do you know what it is?
You need telos. I guess you need a direction.
Yeah, your telos, your aim, your objective. What is it? According to the Gnostic uh, description of the human animal, we are animals, and in some ways, other animals are, superior to us. They're better at us
Mm,
than we are at many other things. But
mm,
we have particular traits, like reasoning, symbolic thinking,
mm,
And so uh, the characteristic of the human animal is that it has a singularity of telos. This is getting back to what you said at the very beginning. So, what does that mean? It means that each human individual has the capacity through its innate faculties to define a purpose for itself.
mm,
And then it follows that telos. We are teleological animals.
mhm.
Now, other animals, like for instance, say dogs, they are not, or swallows, starlings, in a murmuration of starlings.
Yeah.
What a murmuration of starlings is. There is no individual singularity of telos
Mm,
in starlings. They are in a morphological field. How can they,
mm,
thousands of them, fly together without ever running into each other?
mhm,
But not one of them departs from the murmuration.
mhm,
We have the ability to depart. We live in a morphogenetic field with the rest of human beings, but we have the ability to find our own path in that field.
mhm,
That's what tell us.
mhm,
So how do you find that path? When you find that path, when you have purpose and direction, then you can live up to that formula, which is the
Hmm.
ultimate formula of this experiment, the outcome of the world drama turns on one life at a time.
Mm.
What does that mean? It means that the aeons, the divine designers who created this experiment on this world where you're living today, on this earth, they set it up so that one single human being could determine the outcome of the experiment.
Mm.
And that doesn't mean that only one does, but that means that
Right.
every one of us has the ability to act and live in a way that determines the outcome of this entire experiment. Can you conceive of that? How
Hmm.
that was set up in that way?
Hmm.
It's awesome to even
It's incredible. It's, I guess, fractal is kind of a
yeah,
word that might explain
absolutely.
this.
It is fractal. Yes.
Yeah. So the same totality of energy or purpose or meaning exists in the tiniest pinhead as it does in the entire cosmos, you know.
You said it.
Um,
You said it. You nailed it. Your telos, your purpose, is a singularity, a fractal singularity in the entire purpose of the experiment.
mm, yeah, and that's beautiful. That's I mean, it's one of the most directive emotional things you can hold on to. Not even emotional, but rational, emotional, everything. Um, because I don't really know how to explain it, but it's the job in and of itself. And it's detached from the perceived jobs or works that you need to do that will be your purpose. But the purpose is that thing in and of itself.
Yeah, what makes all of the other factors in your purpose, in your life work, uh, cohere? They all cohere on that
Yeah,
point.
that's it. That's it. Yeah. It's the coherent anchor.
That's right.
Hmm. Well, beautiful. I think this is a good place to finish.
Certainly, we kind of brought it to the finish line.
Yeah.
One of the things I
Yeah.
love about being a Gnostic is, the arrogance and the pretentiousness of it is just off the charts. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, me
I
too.
enjoy being able to sit here, in a public meeting and say, "Yeah, I know the whole divine design, the whole divine experiment on Earth works." And take it or leave it. If you love it, great. If you don't, I don't mind either way.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful and enjoyable to be able to say these things and converse about these things. And I think
It is beautiful. It doesn't always beg to, and like I'll watch some other people who are very intelligent and have a great ability with philosophy and that kind of stuff, but they're phrasing everything like, well, maybe like this, maybe it's this, maybe it's this. It's never like, I think it's this. And like, prove me wrong. This is a good, like, this is a good way to think about it. Um,
prove me wrong or prove me right, even
or
better.
prove, yeah,
Prove me right.
yeah.
And anyone who says, "Well, John, how can you say that you know that?" And I will say, "Well, how can you know that I don't know that?"
Fair
Okay.
point. Yeah,
Well, it's been great, great. Really glad we're recording this. We'll
yeah,
see
me too.
how we get it out eventually, and I'll pick you up again a little bit down the road. We're kind of meeting on Sundays, right?
I think that Sundays work well for me. Yeah, if it works good for you, then we can carry this schedule on.
Excellent. Thanks.
And yeah, send me over the whole thing, and I'm just going to put the whole thing up.
Super.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Have a lovely evening.
Hasta la vista. Okay.
Hasta la vista.